one of your former employees, guy you setting the road to coaching stardom, is now making a name for himself in Scottish football. Kevin Thelwell, the sporting director at Rangers, he's making a few headlines just now this season. Tell me how it all started with yourself and Kevin.
Well, very interesting. I think it was about 2005. It all started when we were looking to appoint a head. Back then, Scott, I think it was the head of Centre of Excellence at Preston North End. And we brought a couple of people in to get interviewed. I was then told by my assistant manager about this lad called Kevin Thelwell, who was working at the Welsh FA at that point, if I remember. Kevin came in, had a very good conversation with him, and eventually we appointed Kevin as I said, the head of Centre of Excellence at Preston North End, along with an assistant head of the academy, if you like, Centre of Excellence, a guy called Glenn Salmon. And what's interesting, Scott, I look at these two lads, and there's no doubt that back then, Kevin was more of an administrator. The brains of the organisation in relation to training, etc., was a guy called Glenn Salmon. Glenn was a good guy, but Kevin was very, very good at the administration. And we brought him to Preston and made 2 wonderful years.
What was his role then at Preston? What was Kevin doing?
Basically heading up the youth. I worked very closely with Kevin. As I said, we gave him that big opportunity. We brought him to Preston. We worked very closely. We had a great relationship. I was constantly going down to academy games or Centre of Excellence games. I was going to parents' meeting. Both of us were going to the parents' meetings and meeting all the kids, etc. So we had a great relationship. Again, trying to develop that Centre of Excellence at Preston. And Kevin's role at that point, obviously, as the head, was to make sure that all the administration and all the coaches and all the young players and parents, etc., were all getting put in the right direction. And it certainly was, as I said, a tremendous appointment back then. And no doubt it worked very, very well with the working relationship that we had.
Were you involved in the interview process that brought Kevin to the club? Obviously, we recommend. What was it about Kevin that appealed to you and stood out? He was obviously quite young as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was just in early 30s, I think he was. Wasn't about that, Scott. Just clearly a young man that was very keen on coaching. Somebody that could certainly put on good sessions. Him and his assistant Glenn Salmon were very, very good with kids, particularly Glenn Salmon, who had an outgoing personality. Kevin Thelwell was much more serious, but certainly another lad that was very good in and around all the kids and the coaches, etc. Very well organised. I liked the way that he worked. When I chatted to him, I just liked what he was saying regarding where he was wanting to go and what he was doing and how he was working, Scott. What kind of sessions he puts on, what formations he likes to play. And it was just a good conversation with these two guys. And eventually, as I said, we brought them in and we gave them that great opportunity.
You were saying that his strength was maybe more the admin side, but I think he did a lot out on the grass as well.
Yeah, time to time he was out in the grass. Probably not as much as he would have liked because of the administration that was involved back then. And there's a lot of administration. When you're a head of academy or Centre of Excellence, there is a ton of administration you've got to take care of. But certainly Kevin, when he was on the grass, he certainly was very well organised and an excellent coach.
Did you see him going on as an administrator, or did you see him going more as a coach?
Well, back then, I've got to say, I just felt that he was perfectly suited to be the head of, if you like, the academy. That's why in 2006, I then took him to Derby County as the head of academy. Because we had such a good relationship and we'd done a great job, first team in academy or Centre of Excellence level back then. We had a great relationship. And when that Derby County opportunity came up, believe it or not, Scott, Kevin Thelwell was the very first appointment that I made at Derby County in my staffing. So that shows you the respect that I had for him. It shows you what I felt that he'd done coming in with Glenn Salmon, the job that they'd done. I took him and Glenn to Derby County. I thought the two of them were excellent in the academy, dealing with young kids, dealing with parents. As I said, they had that great balance between Kevin, the administrator / coach, And then, of course, Glenn Salmon with that great personality of that. He had that Liverpool banter. Came to Liverpool. Glenn Salmon had that personality, outgoing personality. Kevin was much more serious, very well organised, but it was just a pleasure to take them to Derby County and give them a little helping hand again. Scott, it was very important.
You left Derby County before them.
Yeah, well, sadly, Glenn Salmon left pretty early due to family situations. But after that, as I said, when I eventually left Derby County, Kevin stayed on. I think he was 2 days as interim manager. And then the new manager came in. And then I think 6 months later, Kevin then moved on to becoming the head of academy at Wolves.
He's not had that. I mean, he went to Wolves. I think he's been out in New York Red Bulls as well. He was at Everton for head of recruitment, and then he's obviously come into Rangers in the summer. I mean, he's made a decent career for himself, hasn't he?
Well, looking back at the Derby thing, one of the other big moves that we made was when my assistant manager was stuck at Preston due to a contractual issue, and of course I was working at Derby. I was one man short, and what I decided to do was bring Kevin into the first team, just building up to the playoff semi-finals. And I felt, Scott, that an extra pair of hands was necessary. I wanted Kevin to be there. He was very well organised, worked very well with him. And we brought him into the first team training session just prior to the playoffs. I got him involved in the 2 playoffs. And then, of course, I took Kevin as part of the staff to the Wembley final against West Brom. And it was a tremendous experience that Kevin was given, particularly when you're working in the academy level, to get that opportunity to work with the first team. Just like we're doing at Morton at the minute with 2 academy guys in Gary Miller and Joe McKee, both excellent young guys in the academy manager and the assistant, now working with the first team. That experience, Scott, is invaluable, and that's exactly what I decided to do with Kevin and Glenn until Glenn left, Glenn Salmon. And then building up to that final, that extra pair of hands was a big help. And of course, one of the things that Kevin we can remember distinctly is that through my own pocket, through my own bonus, I then handed Kevin a very good 5-figure sum of bonus for what happened at Wembley, and it was a pleasure to have him involved.
Was that just? I take it he wasn't due to get a bonus, so you gave him out of your cut.
Yeah, that's right. I just felt with the work that the staff had done, there was a lot of other staff involved in that weren't, if you like, didn't have the bonus as part of their contract. I decided, because of their input and their help, it was very invaluable to me. And as I said, one of the things that I done was to give Kevin that bonus, that 5-figure sum bonus for his contribution and help in relation to working with the first team, building up through the semi-finals of the playoff, and then, of course, into that wonderful Wembley day against West Brom.
Since then, obviously, he's gone on and had a decent career in football, hasn't he? I mean, must have been big clubs in America and Everton. Seems to have made a name for himself.
I've got to say, Scott, I'm very surprised. I never ever took him as a sporting director. He's quite a soft lad, quite quiet in the sense of, I always felt he was perfectly suited in the academy. He was a great administrator. When he went onto the grass, he was also very good on the coaching side, obviously with his experience at the Welsh FA. But he never took me as a sporting director. He was certainly quite a quiet lad in the sense of, you wouldn't say that he had the strongest of character. So certainly in the academy, he was perfectly suited for that role. But he left Wolves and then got that opportunity as the sporting director. And then he's been on to do that. But I've got to say, Scott, it does surprise me, particularly with the personality and character that he's got. Then I always felt he was probably perfectly suited, working with kids, working with parents, working with academy staff members, and organising all that department.
Seen his time, obviously, before Everton. Were you still in contact, or did you have any contact with Kevin at all?
I've got to say that I've not. I met him once or twice in England after we both left Derby County, but I was hoping to get a call just to go for a coffee when he came to Glasgow. I was hoping that he would remember who gave him his start, who brought him into the wide world of football, professional football. sadly, that call's not come in. I was looking forward to having a chat with him, chatting about the good old days. But again, Scott, football moves fast. It moves quick. I'm just disappointed. I did expect to hear from him again, just to go for a coffee, just to have a chat, just to talk about the good old days and the successes that we had and the development that we went through, coming through, as I said, the Welsh FA, into Preston North End, 2 playoffs, into Derby County. My very first appointment at Derby was Kevin Thelwell, getting to that wonderful promotion and then getting into the Premier League. And then, of course, moving on from there. So, a bit disappointed that he's not picked up the phone and at least took me for a lunch. I thought he may have took me for a lunch, Scott, but he's not taken me for a lunch, and I'm sure it's not a monetary problem that he can't take me for a lunch.
No, in terms of, have you never come up with, have you ever used him as a reference or anything throughout your career or whatever?
Well, I have. Funny enough, he's written a tremendous reference for me a number of years back when we made contact with, I think it was at that point either Everton or Red Bull. I can't remember, Scott, but he's given me the most outstanding reference that you could ask for. And in that reference, he certainly talked about how much he enjoyed the relationship, how much he rated me as the manager at the time, and all the good things that we'd done. I mean, the reference, without getting into too much detail, the reference, Scott, was absolutely top class. And that reference is obviously getting used in relation to contacting other clubs and doing what we're doing. So it's a tremendous, obviously coming from Kevin now, the sporting director, and what he's done. It's just tremendous. It's a tremendous read. I'm very pleased and very thankful that Kevin decided to put those words down in black and white and give us the compliments that he gave us. As I said before, my only disappointing thing is that miserable so-and-so wouldn't put his hand in his pocket and at least take me for a coffee or a bit of lunch.
I was going to say, called you, but the way you're talking about him, you might want to reverse the charges.
Well, I think I need to think about that, but unfortunately, he's not called, so I can't even reverse the charges. I just want to step back and hope one day that he does take me for a bit of lunch, and he does remember, and he doesn't have a short memory. He does remember who started his career, and he does remember what's been done for him.
Obviously I'm not privy to the reference he's given you, but it sounds like it's been pretty glowing. So surely if it's that good, he would put it in front of his paymasters, and you should be in the running for this Rangers job.
Scott, you need to ask him that question. I don't know why, having put a reference like that, having done what we've done, the salary increases that he got, the bonuses that he got, all through working through Preston, Derby, and of course getting into the Premier League as well, where there was another tremendous input with what took place. I've got to say, it's a question you'd need to ask Kevin. I don't know. All I do know is that I left Derby County. Him and I never had any crosswords that I can remember. We always had a great relationship, hence the reason why he was taken to the club. And then, of course, when I left Derby, then, of course, things just moved forward. And unfortunately, no, I haven't heard from him, Scott. And that's a question you would need to ask Kevin, especially when you look at the reference. The reference is, it is as good a reference as you could ask for. And is it as complimentary as you could wish for? Because it does. Don't get me wrong, Scott, he's only telling the truth. And I only want him to tell the truth. At the end of the day, just tell the truth. Tell the truth on what took place inside the club. Tell the truth on the relationships and the improvements and the successes and the runs and the records, etc. And that's exactly what he's done. He's
got a hard job there, just finally, hasn't he? And the way it started with Russell Morton going and now looking for a new manager, the season hasn't started well. He's got a tough gig, isn't he? Well,
this is where he's now got to show that. I talked earlier on about that character, that personality. And that's a bit that surprised me, because to go into that type of role, you've got to be strong-minded. You've got to have a strong opinion. You've got to stand your ground and pick the right people for the right reasons. You've got to make the right changes at the right times for what you believe in and what your role is and what your position is. So from that point of view, I think that's where Kevin's now got to stand up, and he's got to have that backbone to make tough decisions that are in the best interest of the club. And I'm not suggesting that he's not doing that, but I certainly, looking back and working with Kevin, that was a bit that I was always quite surprised at when he moved into sporting director, whether or not he had that character, that personality, and whether or not he was going to stand in that room and make that call as to what is in the best interest of the club, the fans and the team, and pick the right people and make the right changes for the right reasons. That's something that Kevin, I'm sure, will be sitting back addressing right now.